Welcome to today's Managing Change Successfully webinar. The webinar will be recorded and a copy available on demand. For those of you who haven't met myself before, my name is Michelle MacArthur Morgan, and I'm a Senior Learning and Wellbeing Consultant with Jigsaw at Work. My background for the past 20-some years has been in applied brain science, really, both on the psychological side. So many years ago now, started out by doing my degree in psychology, and then have since 2008 very much been involved in studying neuroscience, and not so much from the kind of the research point of view side of it, very much from applying the research that is available around neuroscience into the world of work. And I'm also the creator of the Jigsaw Discovery tool. On our agenda today, the webinar is going to be exploring and discussing how people with different behavioural preferences experience change and transition. We're also going to be looking at the effects of imposed change. We're looking at change, fatigue, and the stress that is caused when we're going through continuous change and after change after change, dealing with resistance to change, and also supporting how we can actually support team members through change based on their behavioural preference. So ongoing change is an integral part of today's workplace, yet change is often the cause of a great deal of stress that can lead to significant loss of productivity, motivation, and effectiveness. Research results consistently show that many change solutions fail and do not achieve their goal. But still, organisations continue the same change management approaches, regardless of evidence. Following the pandemic, organisations are trying to find ways to continue to thrive amidst all of the complexity and ambiguity and uncertainty that's out there. Employees are having to overcome their anxieties and concerns as society opens up, whilst dealing with those disruptions and fundamental changes to where they work, how they work, and when they work. Finding a way to build back better, a way that not only secures the future of our organisations, but also provides employees with a quality working experience, is the challenge that we're all now facing. At Jigsaw Discovery, we recognise that people experience change very differently and have very different talents to offer a change management process. This means we help to enable managers responsible for leading people through change to leverage the behavioural diversity of their team members, to bring the energy to the project and create lasting and successful results. I want to share with you now the results of a poll that we did, and we asked people actually to put into the give us the answer for words they associated with change. And here are the words that you can see that people associated with change. We can see very diverse words there, from the confusion, the unknown, the resistance, disruption, to the kind of excitement, progress, new horizons, opportunity, so energy, all different words, very, very contrasting at both ends of the spectrum, from that anxiety through to that excitement and opportunity. Having an understanding of behavioural preferences can provide managers and leaders with useful insights into the different ways their people react to changes that they're undergoing. It also helps managers to understand the different kinds of information and support that individual team members will need to give everyone an opportunity to engage and get on board with the changes. So by having that understanding helps us to understand why some people are excited by change, while others find it really quite stressful and tiring. Why some people want detailed plans and others just want that top line level information. Why some people jump straight into that implementation, whilst others want to step back and think it through first. why some people are more concerned about the specific tasks, whilst others are worrying more about the effect upon the people involved. And it helps our managers and leaders to identify things that they will need to consider when planning the change, such as how will they communicate? What will they communicate? When will they communicate? And be able to kind of judge the possible reactions of different team members to their various communications and actions. I can see from looking at the people online that some of you are Jigsaw licensees and have worked with Jigsaw Discovery for quite a while. And will have an understanding of the Jigsaw Discovery tool and behavioural framework. But for those of you who don't know the Jigsaw Discovery tool and behavioural framework, the Jigsaw is actually based on 3 axes. The 3 axes of thinking and feeling, sensing and intuition, introversion and extroversion. And what differentiates it from many of the other profiling tools is that we don't have long questionnaires and computer-generated reports. In a Jigsaw Discovery learning experience, participants are actively immersed in a journey of self-discovery, where they learn about their own behavioural preferences, their talents and their hidden strengths, and they create their personal behavioural map as part of that process. Participants gain insights into how their actions and behaviours are perceived by others and develop an understanding of the behaviours of others, whether that be their colleagues, team members, managers, clients, friends, or family. And all of this is done in either the virtual world using digital jigsaws or in a face-to-face learning environment using our wooden jigsaws. To help you get the most out of the webinar, if you've not yet completed your own behavioural map, I'm just going to give you a high-level kind of introduction overview of the behavioural framework. Introversion and extroversion is all about where people prefer to focus their energy and attention, how they gain their energy or recharge their batteries. And people with a preference for introversion have an internal focus. They recharge their energy from their internal world. Whereas people with a preference for extroversion recharge from the external world, pulling energy in from the world around them. There are 4 basic behavioural preferences, and we're all a unique combination of all 4 preferences. And I'm just going to give you a few of the talents and strengths of each preference so that the ones that I'm about to mention are by no means exhaustive, but it will just give you that flavour, that insight into the 4 preferences. So our ever ready character, as we call her, is all about achievement and success, whatever that means to that individual. They tend to come across as quite blunt, direct speaking, focus driven, competitive, strategic thinkers. Then we have our ray of sunshine character, who's all about enjoyment and novelty. It loves things that are new, great ideas person, great starter person, creative thinker, enthusiastic, pragmatic problem solvers, and they know the person that knows the person, very, very resourceful individuals. We have our carey character, who's all about caring, protecting, helping, supporting others, very much a team player, a great listener, considerate, puts people before the task, very compassionate and empathetic. And last but not least, we have Mr. Huey Blue. Mr. Huey Blue maintains order and correctness. He likes routines and structure, does things by the book. There's a right way or a wrong way, but no midway. Very detailed, systematic, and cautious. So now I want to have a look at how each of the 4 characters are influenced by their behavioural preferences when it comes to change. So during change, an individual's preference on the introversion and extroversion axes comes very much into play. Both introverts and extroverts, they want information. but they want it in different forms. So the introversion-extroversion axis influences how people want to receive and process information. So introverts, for an example, they like written information, especially like before a meeting. If you're going into an important meeting, lots to discuss, the introvert likes written information before that meeting so they can go in prepared. They don't like to be put on the spot. They like to have time to reflect and think through things before they go into the meeting. They like to be asked what they think and have their concerns and ideas heard. Introverts think to speak and think to act. Extroverts, on the other hand, they're very much about the verbal in-person communication. They talk in order to think. First things they say are not always their best answers, because as they continue speaking, they're continuing to think and develop their ideas. They need to be involved. They need to be kept close to the energy for a project. They like to have the attention of others. They like to have a voice. And the extroverts prefer to do rather than think. They like to get in with a project, get on with it, keep that enthusiasm for the project alive and keep the project moving forward. Next, we'll look at the combination of the thinking and feeling and sensing and intuition axes and how that influences an individual's needs with regard to change. So the thinking and feeling axis influences the criteria upon which the individual rejects or supports the change and to their focus during the change. The sensing and intuition axes influences the type of information individuals need and the likely questions that they're going to want answering. So we're now going to take a look at our intuitive thinkers. The intuitive thinkers we call ever ready, an ever ready preference. And the key needs of a person with an ever ready preference when it comes to changes, they need to know the why. They want the logic or the thinking behind the change. They need clear goals and outcomes. Managers and change leaders need to be able to demonstrate their competency by getting the change completed. The big picture, the overall plan and the direction. They need to be able to add their own ideas and vision. They want to get involved. They want some of the project to be delegated to them, to be given the authority, the autonomy, and the responsibility to actually get on with it. They need completion. If we look now at our intuitive feeling person, or ray of sunshine, as we affectionately call them, the key needs of the ray of sunshine during change are, they want, first of all, the biggest possible picture. Paint the vision, big, bold, and bright. They want to know that consideration has been given to the way that change will affect people. They want to know all about the possibilities and opportunities which the change is going to open up. They need an opportunity to add their ideas and to build upon the vision. They need to be involved and close to the energy and enthusiasm. They want to see the leader's enthusiasm for the change. They need appreciation and recognition for their ideas. And they want it to be an enjoyable experience as they transition through the various changes. So moving on to our sensing feeling preference, or caring the harmonizers, as we call her. The key needs for a carer are, they like to know why the change is necessary. What is wrong with the current way of doing things? What are people doing wrong? They want to know the who, the what, the when, and the where. They want information on how the change is going to affect people, how it will affect their colleagues, their customers, and how you are planning to meet the people's needs. They need clear guidelines and expectations about roles and responsibilities. They need to feel valued and appreciated, and they need ongoing reassurance throughout the change project. The key needs of our sensing thinking preference, Mr. Huey Blue. For him, his needs are all about having realistic information about the change and the future. They need to know why the change is necessary, what is wrong with the way things are done now. They want clear timelines and guidelines. They want the specifics of the what, when, how, why, and who. They want to know the benefits and the drawbacks. They want the logic behind the change. They want a realistic plan for implementation of the change. And they need managers to demonstrate their competency by being knowledgeable about the change. They don't just want to know all the benefits of the change, they want to know the negatives of the change as well, so they can validate those changes for themselves, so they can have a realistic picture of the future. So our behavioural preferences influence our responses to every aspect of organisational change. How we want to be informed, the kind of information that we want, the criteria we will use to decide whether to support or resist the change, how we want to be involved, how we want the change plans to be structured. Understanding the behavioural preferences of team members, therefore, can help managers to design and implement change successfully. In larger teams, it may not always be possible for managers to know the behavioural preferences of individual team members. Therefore, it's important to ensure that communication and interactions take into account all of the preferences. Addressing the needs of the different preferences and finding ways to leverage their talents and their strengths provides a really solid base for team members to buy into the changes and move forward together. To leverage your knowledge and understanding of behavioural preferences to support the successful implementation of change, there are three key areas. The first one is take responsibility for your own needs. What are the specific actions you can take to make sure you receive the type and style of information you need? What do you actually need to be able to engage and support the changes? And how are you going to fulfill those needs? For example, do you need to know about the values that are guiding the decisions and how the effects on people will be dealt with? Or do you need to understand the logic behind the decisions and the plan for how those changes will be implemented? The second thing we need to think about is we need to focus on the needs of team members. What can you do to ensure the preference needs of team members are met? How will you ensure that you attend to the different needs of each of the individuals? For example, team members with a sensing preference, which in Jigsaw behavioural framework is Mr. Huey Blue and the careys, have you given them that step-by-step information and explanation? Have you also considered the needs of team members who have a preference for intuition? Because giving them the step-by-step approach will not support their needs. For the intuitive preferences, they need that top level, big picture information and a chance to add to it and to do it their own way. And lastly, take action. What are some of the specific things your organisation can implement to respect the behavioural differences and needs to encourage the support and contribution of all team members? So here are just a few of the ideas you might want to try. Ever ready? Provide them with the overall plan and outcomes and invite them to critique it. For our Rail Sunshine, talk about the vision for the future, the big picture. Clarify those potential opportunities and possibilities for team members and customers. For our carers, give specific people-focused information about what is not working and how the changes will improve the situation. Clarify how the needs of people during the change will be addressed. And for our Mr. Huey Blues, provide explicit information and details about the how, the when, and the who. Give information about the alternatives that you've considered, and discuss the pros and cons of each alternative that you have considered. In addition to giving considerations to the 4 characters with your actions, you'll also need to accommodate the needs of the introversion and extroversion. So, for example, do you hold large group briefings with opportunities for discussion? Do you give out information in writing prior to holding the meeting, for example? Before I speak about the effects of imposing change on people, it's important to differentiate between change which is intentional, which you yourself have initiated, and change which has been imposed upon by the organisation. With intentional change, the changes are usually a conscious, considered decision. Typically, if you're the person that's making that decision, you will have had lots of information available to you. You'll be able to understand the why the changes are necessary and what options are available. The decisions will seem logical and reasonable, and you'll believe that they'll be able to solve the problem. You will have already bought into them. And as a decision maker, you have that autonomy and that feeling of being in control, which helps to create the certainty and a reward response for the brain, as you believe that you're moving away and avoiding any threat. The people who are not involved in the decision-making process, which typically in the workplace are the team members, the workforce, they don't have the same access to that same level of information and details. They don't have the same amount of time to process the changes, to be able to think about the situation in a logical and meaningful way. Team members are much more likely to feel out of control and helpless to do anything about the changes taking place. But even where change has been very well thought through and presented well to the team, ultimately, no one likes to be told how, when, and where they will work. And this is especially true now when many workers have been used to a far more flexible way of working, having had increased levels of autonomy over the last 16 months or so. So imposed change is likely to raise questions around loyalty and expertise, consistency, credibility, and motivations. Questions such as, why should I be loyal to the business when they're not loyal to me? Will I still be competent? Will I still be able to do my new role? If we make these changes, will more changes just follow? What's the hidden agenda? Will it really make a difference? Just as possible as it is possible to predict some of the questions team members will be asking, it's also possible to predict possible reactions if change is not communicated and implemented well. At best, imposed changes create uncertainty, which can lead to team members being cautious, keeping their heads down, not wanting to rock the boat. There'll be some skepticism around the changes. Will they really work? Are they really for the good of the organisation? That skepticism may lead to suspicion. Are we actually being told the truth? What are they not telling us? And at the far extreme, that can turn into anger. After all I've done, no one's even interested in my opinion. Nobody wants to know. When thinking about the changes you want to make and how you will communicate the changes, how will you support the different behavioural preferences and engage everyone in the project? Having an awareness of how changes may be perceived by team members and their typical responses, will help you to make the right decisions and plan for how you will react and respond to the behavioural needs of the team. We live in a world where change is ceaseless. Before one change has been completed and embedded, along comes the next one, and the next one, and the next one. This is what is being termed as change fatigue, as people are experiencing prolonged periods of stress caused by the ongoing changes. It's important to have an understanding of change fatigue, as it can lead to stress, anxiety, burnout, cynicism, and distrust, all of which can undermine the success of change. So we asked, how do your colleagues feel about the never-ending changes in the workplace that they have to deal with every day? 30% demotivated and cynical, burnt out. 60% stressed, anxious, overwhelmed. So 90% of the people asked said their colleagues were at best stressed and anxious, and a lot were demotivated, cynical, and burnt out. The other 10% had just kind of resigned to it. It's out of my control. I've just got to accept it. And that's really what we don't want. We don't want people just to accept it, because if they just accept it, if they've resigned to the changes, they haven't truly and genuinely bought into the changes. So ongoing change can lead to a downward spiral in team members' attitudes towards the business, the leaders, and the changes. It can also lead to a decrease in motivation, trust, and morale. Skepticism can set in, which, if not managed, can lead to cynicism. The correlation between the downward spiral and behavioural preference is the thinking and feeling axes. It's all to do with decision making. People who have a thinking preference tend to become naturally skeptical to change, to ask questions, and to give their feedback. People who have a feeling preference tend to be distrusting, and they're wanting to accept, and they go on the defensive. As new changes come along before earlier ones are fully integrated, the danger can be that cynicism develops amongst team members. The natural skepticism of people who have a thinking preference can turn to cynicism when their opinions and feedback is overlooked or just ignored, pushed to one side. The decisions made by the leaders appear to be illogical or not even properly thought through. When team members don't trust in the knowledge or competence of the leaders. The natural wanting to trust people that comes with a feeling preference turns to cynicism when team members feel their values or relationships have been betrayed. The decisions appear to have been made without giving any real thought to how people will be affected by the changes. Team members feel that leaders don't really appreciate them or even care about them. So skepticism can be positive, as it helps to identify problems, and by leaders understanding the role of skepticism and perceiving it as a force for good, rather than the team just moaning or whinging, leaders can start to encourage individuals to speak up, to share their thoughts and opinions. Because at the end of the day, no one single person can have seen it all or know it all. Leaders need to be actively encouraging team members to speak up. It could be the difference between success and failure of the change. If the skepticism of people with a thinking preference is allowed to go unheard, and the trust of people with a feeling preference is betrayed, then cynicism will set in. And cynicism is corrosive. It leads to distrust of leaders, line managers, colleagues, and even team members themselves even start to distrust themselves as being a valuable team member. The only effective way to stop the downward spiral for leaders is to give consideration to the factors that lead individuals towards cynicism and then take action to head that cynicism off. Change is stressful, both physically and emotionally, and if left unmanaged can lead to anxiety, depression, and serious mental illness. I'm not going to delve into stress today, as we've talked quite extensively about stress in a number of our webinars over the last year or so. And if you want to watch any of those previous webinars, you can actually find them on the Jigsaw Discovery YouTube channel. So if we think about the resistance now, it's natural for team members to resist what they perceive as imposed change. Organisational change fails because the needs of people are not being considered in the process of deciding and implementing the change. Leaders often feel that they don't have the time or the resources to try and deal with what each individual team member may be concerned about or need. And they assume that people will just adjust, they'll go along with it. A big advantage of using the behavioural preference framework during organisational change is that it provides a logical structure for identifying team members' needs and informs leaders as to how they can best meet those needs. A further advantage is that by considering the different perspectives and ways in which the changes are experienced, means that important, possibly even mission critical questions will be asked and many pitfalls can be avoided. For people to embrace and support change, they need information. The specific type of information they need, is it people's process, detailed, big picture? It needs to be delivered in the ways they need. So is it written documentation or group meetings and discussions? And they need to be included in the way they want to be included and when they want to be included. So here are a few insights into what needs to happen to get each of the 4 behavioural characters supporting and participating in the change. So starting with our ever ready character. Ever ready will participate if they can be included early in the planning and development of the required outcome and goals, or if they're given the responsibility for that strategic planning, gathering resources, getting the results, even if that's only at a lower level of the project, a small part of the project. The ray of sunshine. They need, again, to be involved in those early stages. They need their ideas being considered. And so they can enthuse and they want to be able to go and inspire. They're very useful, very helpful at inspiring other colleagues. And again, we can get them very much engaged if we can get them started quickly, doing new things and making the changes as they go. So let them start implementing things, let them start experimenting with things, and they'll make the kind of tweaks and changes as they go along. Caring the harmonizers. They need to be convinced the changes will lead to growth and development for people, for themselves, for their colleagues, possibly even their customers. And one very good way of getting them involved is actually getting them involved in designing and participating in support programs or support that you put in place for people to help other people through the change process. With Mr. Huey Blue, give them the information and the time to process that information and give them a space to feedback and pay attention to their feedback, really listen to their feedback. Also, it helps by giving them the authority and the accountability for making necessary changes within their own areas of responsibility. So getting them involved in the implementation within their own specific areas. So this is actually what we call the alternative change curve. And it shows us how each of the characters relate to the change curve. So our ever-readies move quickly to that re-engineering stage. They get busy with the strategic planning and focusing on getting that desired result. That takes them through to that wonderful place of acceptance. The ray of sunshine. The ray of sunshine, they want to be involved with it, exploring the possibilities, experimenting to find a solution and enjoying the process along the way. And when they find the solution, they want to be able to celebrate that win, celebrate finding the solution. With our careys, they're the worriers. That worry can turn to anger if they feel that their values are being betrayed and they're not actually being heard as people. There's little consideration to people. So they want to have that people information. They want to feel included. They want their ideas heard. And that helps them to move them into that achieve comfort, where a place where they feel comfortable with the changes. And Mr. Huey Blue, most prone to resistance. If they don't get that detailed information, then their reaction is to resist that change, because they need to be able to validate it before they can really move with the change. They want all that detailed information that they can then process in their own space at their own pace and validate it or make sense of the change for themselves. And then they'll quite happily move into that implementation stage. So as we draw to a close, I just want to spend a few moments looking at some of the important skills leaders need to support team members through change. The first one is have a curious mind. Be present in both mind and body. Give your full attention to the individual when listening to them. Ask questions to help you understand the specifics of how the individuals are experiencing change, how they feel, their thoughts, what life is really like for them. Show that genuine empathy. Some feeling preferences will benefit from that ongoing reassurance about the overall changes they're going through, their contribution, their value to the project. Go out of your way to ask questions. Set yourself a challenge to find out one thing each day about the change, the implementation. Go with that mindset of assuming that someone in your team has a solution or has an idea or some really important information, but you don't know just who it is yet. You've got to find that person. Don't be so precious about your own ideas that you actually stop listening to the ideas of others. Ask yourself how this new piece of information that you've just been given impacts on your idea. Does it point to an alternative or better idea? And lastly, be explicit in letting team members know how they can get involved and participate. So if we look at the journey that we've all been on over the last 15, 16 months, back in March 2020, we experienced that shock of going into lockdown and the realization of the danger COVID-19 was creating for us all. And we experienced that acute stress disorder, which we all coped with in very, very different ways. No one really knew or appreciated at that stage just how long COVID would be with us for. And most people thought that the measures put in place for people to work from home or the strict social distancing, wearing of PPE, etc., for frontline workers would just be a short time move. By May of 2020, things were becoming much, much clearer as the enormity of the pandemic was becoming very apparent, and there was very little we could be certain of. And the best way of describing what most people were experiencing at that point was pain. And little did we know back in May 2020 that it would be another year before we'd be able to stop feeling so much pain and be able to start to unlock society and rebuild and move into this period which we're in now of rehabilitation. And during this period of rehabilitation, we've got to find ways of building back better. We need to help and support our people to overcome their anxieties and refine their social skills, help people to feel comfortable again around others. Organisations have to balance the needs of the business with the wants and needs of their employees, which according to many research projects looks like there is an overwhelming employee expectation that they will be able to continue working from at home at least some of the time. One thing that is very clear, no matter what, both for individual employees and for organisations, amidst all of the ongoing uncertainty, anxieties, we'll have to find a way of navigating through the months ahead and successfully implementing changes to just about every part of our lives at work and at home. Hopefully, some of the strategies we've spoken about today will give you some food for thought and insights into some of the things that you can do to make your change programs a success. So what next? There are several ways you can learn more and delve deeper into behavioural preferences and change. On Monday, the 5th of July, we're holding a virtual showcase, which is free of charge to attend, and you'll get an opportunity to find out more about the virtual learning experience with Jigsaw and the various activities. You'll also get a chance to complete your own behavioural profile and have a one-on-one online feedback and coaching session afterwards. We do one-to-one coaching sessions. We also do free 30-minute appointments, and there's a couple of dates available. 1st of June, 28th of May is also available there. But please, by all means, drop me an email. My email address is on the bottom there. And please drop me an email if you would like to arrange a consultation to talk about change in greater detail. And lastly, you can visit our new website, jigsawdiscoverytool.com. So thank you very much for listening today. I hope that you got some useful pointers and tips out of it, and I look forward to seeing you all at our next webinar. Thank you.